A rough end to period number one and a rough end to the game as the Minnesota Wild fall by a score of 7-3. We'll break down all the action on tonight's Locked On Wild POSTCAST.
You are Locked On Wild POSTCAST, part of Locked On Minnesota on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome into tonight's Locked On Wild POSTCAST as the Minnesota Wild fall by a score of 7-3 to the Los Angeles Kings. Now 2-2 on the season. Tonight's Locked On Wild POSTCAST is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. This game had some weird energy to it, at least early on. The Kings score on the first shot of the game to take a 1-0 lead. Then the Minnesota Wild able to counter on a weird bounce. John Merrill trying to get the puck into the zone. It deflects behind the net out to in front, right to Connor Dewar. Dewar doesn't even have to break stride. Puck is right to him, and he's able to deposit it into the net to tie the score at 1 apiece. Then later in the period, Jonas Brodin has a shot from the top of the zone. Kirill Kaprizov able to get the deflection past Cam Talbot. It's 2-1 at that point, and things looking pretty good, at least early on. The Wild were able to tighten some things up after that first shot went in. But let's fast forward to the final 5 minutes of the first period, in which the Kings score 3 times, including Pierre-Luc Dubois scoring twice in the final minute of the first period. And it's those goals that the Wild just are not able to recover from here in this one tonight. A game in which the Wilds did not get sent to the box. The Kings went to the box. It was 3 different times early on. They did have another penalty late in the game as well. And so for the Minnesota Wild, not able to capitalize on the power play. The offense, I thought, had good looks most of the game. It just came down to Cam Talbot making some good saves and doing a good job of just preventing the Wild from getting momentum back on their side. But you look up at the board, 7 goals allowed, 2 empty netters at the end. It just sucked all the life out of the Xcel Energy Center here tonight. And, you look at the power play not being able to get any goals on the board here tonight. They had good looks. They had some really good looks, especially in their first couple of power plays. There was one shot in particular in which Cam Talbot had sprawled out in front of the net to try to make the save, leaving the crease open. The puck was just sitting in the crease, but the Wild not able to get a stick on it to tap it in for a goal at that point that would have cut it to 4-3. And you think maybe that might have been enough to kind of pull the Wild back into this game, but they didn't get that shot, and they didn't get several others down the stretch. And it leads to just a rough-looking loss here at Xcel Energy Center to even the Wild's record now at 2-2. Now, looking at Marc-Andre Fleury's performance, gave up the goal on the first shot of the game. The Kings did not get a shot for, at one point, 12 straight minutes in the first period. And the Wild did a good job of preventing them from, for the most part, even entering the defensive zone. And then it just flipped like that. And the first goal was one that got up above Fleury's shoulder. The subsequent goal was another one, same thing. You had that weird Pierre-Luc Dubois goal in which he kicked it, but what was said after review was that he was able to get a puck on it, or a stick on it, to get it through Fleury's 5-hole. So they ended up allowing that goal to stand. Fleury gets frustrated, clearing the puck from behind the net with one hand, and ends up giving up a goal a few seconds later, as there was a screen in front and he was not able to see the puck coming. And so it's it's a frustrating loss, and a few of those goals, at the very least, you'd probably like to have back. But at the end of the day, you just cannot allow a stretch like that, especially winding down the period, especially the final minute of the first period. You just can't allow a team to get back-to-back goals to just sucked the life out of the Xcel Energy Center here in this one tonight. Now, it's game 4. Through 2 games, the Wild have had through 4 games, the Wild have had 2 clunkers, but they had the win against Montreal, a team that they were expected to beat. And so you have a game that you definitely are going to win in column A. You could probably say that the Wild stole one against the Florida Panthers with how the Panthers played that night. Philip Gustafsson really standing on his head to prevent any scoring. So you could say that that was one that the Wilds probably pulled out of the lost column. And the frustrating thing I think about both the Maple Leafs game and the Kings game tonight is that the offense still continued to generate chances to get them back in the game. They just were not able to get those goals to get into the net, to get you within 2, to get you even within 1. Those opportunities just are not quite getting home. And so with the expectation that with Jared Spurgeon out of the Jesse Pierce, with Jared Spurgeon out of the lineup, the expectation that it was going to be a bit of an adjustment for the defense. We've seen that thus far. And obviously this team misses Matt Boldy in the lineup as well, but they still have found a way to get plenty of good opportunities on the board. Just have to start getting them to go. Now, one positive I think that we can pull from tonight's game, and he just continues an absolutely torrid start to the season, is Joel Eriksson Ek. 4th goal of the season, and he has looked really, really nice so far this season. To quote Cousin Eddie from Christmas Vacation, he's looked great so far to start this season. And so with the rest of the lineup, with some guys taking a little longer to get going, you wonder if he gets an opportunity to get elevated to that top line at some point here early on in the season. He's looked fantastic and has really been one of the bright spots for the Wild here this season. We've seen Kirill Kaprizov get off to a little better start than he typically does with a couple goals through 4 games. He also has a 4-game point streak to start the season. So there have been some positives, but it's pretty clear that there are areas that this team needs to shore up as we continue to navigate through the season. Now, we're going to turn it over to listener comments. Want to hear your thoughts on the game. As we saw the Wilds unfortunately come up short here against the Los Angeles Kings. And so we will head to the comments section as we continue tonight's Locked On Wild postcast after a word from our sponsors. Tonight's Locked On Wild postcast is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. You can snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is amazingly easy to use with a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. With the Minnesota Vikings playing on Monday night against San Francisco, plenty of options for you to put player props on, whether it be Jordan Addison, Kirk Cousins, TJ Hawkinson, maybe Cam Akers. You never know, but that spread for the Vikings 49ers game closing up a little bit, so you may want to give that a shot with FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Continuing tonight's Locked On Wild postcast, the Minnesota Wild come up short by a score of 7-3 in this one tonight. We will now turn it over to comments from listeners, and so let us know what you think of what we saw here tonight, and we're going to start with a pretty good representation of what we saw here in this one, as Tracy says, rough. Yes, it was. Especially, again, it comes down to those final few minutes of the first period. If the Wilds can get through without absolutely coming unglued there, you maybe get an opportunity to take the lead there in the second period. We'll never know, because as it stands, 3 goals in the final 4+ minutes of that third period. That's just a backbreaker for the team, and that was what ended up being the outcome here in this one tonight. Tracy also mentioning signs of life from players such as Ek and Kaprizov. They are really heating up here, and again, I wonder if we see a little bit of a juggling here at some point soon, depending on how things continue to play out. But as it stands right now, Kaprizov, Eriksson Ek, they are near the top of the list in terms of players that have had the best starts so far this season. Kevin Fiala did have a couple of points here in this one tonight. He assisted on both of Pierre-Luc Dubois' goals in that first period, and so Fiala gets a couple of points here. But also tip of the cap to former Wilds goalie Cam Talbot. He was really good in this one tonight as the Wilds come up short, and Talbot got the numbers here. Talbot ended his night with just the 3 goals allowed, and ended up facing, I believe it was 32 shots. So 29 out of 32 is not bad for Cam Talbot, as he picks up the win here this evening. So all in all, for the Minnesota Wilds, it just comes down to the defense and the goaltending once again. And we knew that Jared Spurgeon was a player that you're not just going to be able to replace in the lineup. And so obviously his absence has been one that has been wide felt by the Minnesota Wild so far this season. But again, this is one of those weird games where there were a handful of turnovers at the top of the defensive zone that led to additional chances for the Kings. And I felt like the defense, while giving up some pretty questionable opportunities, I thought the defense had some good moments here at points in this one tonight. And so it's one of those where, do you put more blame on the goalie? Do you put more blame on the defense? I think in this one, you probably put a little bit more on the goalie if you're going with the kind of handing out the share of responsibility in this one. So I'd lean more towards Fleury. It just a rough night, and you could tell he was frustrated at the end of that first period as those 3 goals came onto the board. The Wild will take on the Columbus Blue Jackets on Saturday. And for the Wild, Columbus is a team that has struggled over the last couple of seasons, to say the least. But they come into this matchup just like they've got plenty of high-end talent. They're 1-2 on the season and have lost the Flyers and the Red Wings. They beat the New York Rangers, but they do play tomorrow. So they will be coming to Xcel Energy Center on the back end of a back-to-back. And so it's going to be interesting to see how they look, and the Wild with the day off to kind of get themselves rested. You would think that we will see a little bit of jump from the Wild to start the game, but we had a decent amount of jump here to the start of this one, and it was the Kings that ended up picking up the first goal of the game. So all in all, it's one of those. It's similar to what we saw on the in the Toronto game, just that I go more goalie than I do defense for the goals given up in this one. It's just a situation where it's a tough game. The Kings are a very good team, and it's a tough one for the Minnesota Wild here We've got more comments coming in. Da Siesta asking why the Minnesota Wilds do not trade, I'm assuming referring to Marc-Andre Fleury, and get Jesper some starts in relief of Philip Gustafsson. It's not going to happen. And so the earliest you're going to see Jesper Wallstedt is going to be next season. Marc-Andre Fleury is not going anywhere. And so, yeah, it was not a great night, but they're not, the team is not going to just start shipping people off 4 games into the season. And also the fact, as Tracy mentions, that Fleury's got a no trade clause as well. So it's 4 games in, and this is always the delicate balance that we weave early on in the season, is overreacting, not reacting enough. And so at this point, there's really not going to be any sort of changes, I don't think, until players come back from injury. So that's about all I got in this one. It just was it was kind of a ho-hum game. The Kings did a lot of good. They took the Wild out of it early, and the Wild just were not able to, till the final few minutes of the third period, get back in. And so we'll wash this one away and get ready for Saturday's game. Locked on Wild will have you covered with, of course, a new episode coming at you tomorrow. And, of course, we'll have pregame content and during game content for you on Saturday as well. So make sure you subscribe if you have not already, so you don't miss out on any new content or episodes throughout the course of the week and the rest of the season. Locked on Wild has you covered with new episodes every Monday through Friday, plus pre and post game content as well, all here on Locked on Wilds.